Hey there, everybody. Welcome to Wick Live. I am Kayla Josh alongside our winteriscoming.net editor-in-chief, Dan Selcke. You all know him. You all love him. We've got some fun stuff today.
We do. And just, hey, everybody, thanks for being here. Hey, Diane. Hey, Julie. Hey, Pamela. Hello from Michigan. We're close, Pamela. We're in Illinois. Yeah, this is Wick Live. We go through your Game of Thrones, talk about fire news, what you need to know, ephemera, interesting stuff. And this week, we're going to do a whole show dedicated to the topic that you would be shocked. I'm not sure you'd be shocked, too. We get a lot of people, a surprisingly high number, who write to Winter is Coming asking, so can you get me a role as an extra or a role on Game of Thrones?
We do not have that power.
The answer is no. We cannot do that for you. I wish we could. But there are things that you can do. If you want to be an extra, how do you be an extra on Game of Thrones? What is it like when you get there? Kayla Josh has been an extra in shows. You have some insight into that. I do. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk it up. I wish we could do a giveaway for a spot as an extra on the show. How cool would that be? In this imaginary world, it would be really, really cool. You need to team up with HBO on that. But first, let's get to some solid Game of Thrones news. No spoilers this week, but some sad, if inevitable news. Our worst fears were confirmed this week when HBO made a press release announcing that Game of Thrones Season 8 will indeed be airing in 2019, not 2018. Which, I mean... Am I the only one that thought that was already confirmed? You are not the only one. Okay. You and like a bajillion other people. Just checking. Several million. We all knew it, but HBO, I don't know, they sent a press release and I was like, don't we already know this? But they wanted to make it, it's formal now. It's not just picking up what the actors said. Okay. And assuming that. So it's nice to know. Yeah. But we already knew it's fine. In other sad news, Game of Thrones went to the Golden Globes this week, up for Best Drama. What did they lose to? Was it Handmaid's Tale? You can't put me on the spot like that. This Is Us. They did not lose. Wait, who won? Handmaid's Tale won, yes? Yeah, Handmaid's Tale. This Is Us, Handmaid's Tale, and some others. The point was, Game of Thrones did not win Best Drama at the Golden Globes. A shame. It never wins the Golden Globes. Discriminatory. Ah. The actors were not nominated, although Kit Harington and Emilia Clarke did present. They did. And that looked pretty smashing, right? They looked great. They were both wearing black. By the way, Emilia Clarke is such a doll. Oh, she's totally a doll. She's really funny. Every interview I saw that she did on the red carpet and then post-award show with E, she's just like so lovable. I love her. She's completely cute as a button. She's always so happy and bubbly. Yeah, she seems like she's really having fun. She's really happy to be there. I like her a lot too. She seems like a good presence. Girl crush. In contrast, Kit Harington, little tiny story, was caught on TMZ being thrown out of a New York bar recently. What? Yes, you know, we all have off nights. Those Northerners. Those Northerners, sure. It's not that bad, fine, Kit. Have a few drinks, whatever. Julie Davis says, naughty Kit, yes. And no, we did not talk about the extra thing last week, Julie. We're gonna get deep into it, step-by-step how to do it. And yes, Emilia Clarke is an unending delight. In happier news, as you mentioned, Emilia Clarke gave interviews to the Golden Globes, went to an after party, and she gave there was I think Access Hollywood was an adorable interview. People were trying to drag stuff out of her, like they always are. Yes. And she was batting it back, but she did say that as long as we're going to wait for Season 8 over a year, she said it will be worth the wait. Oh God, it's going to be worth it, which I think is very effusive, which is terrific. I like what she said, that after she read the script, she just was walking around in a daze for 3 hours. Left her house and just kind of walked around for 3 hours in a daze and just kind of found her way back after she read the script for Season 8. So hopefully it'll leave us in a similar state of disbelief and a fog of satisfaction. Well said. I thought so, thank you. And another happier news, in terms of where you can go to become an extra, the production will be returning to the Croatian city of Dubrovnik one last time to film scenes for Season 8. Dubrovnik has stood in for King's Landing since the second season. Maybe the location that's most closely associated with it. Do we have an update on their tourism issue? It's still going really strong. I think the statistic was over 90% of the tours in Dubrovnik are now Game of Thrones related in some way. It was a problem last summer, right? There were overcrowding problems. Oh, because people were coming because of the show. I mean, I'm sure that's the case. I mean, the problem they're going to have is after the show is over, how do they maintain that high level of interest?
I don't think they'll have a problem with that.
You don't?
No.
Why not?
I mean, I still go to places that are in movies.
That's true.
Like the Home Alone house.
But you, is that in Chicago?
Yeah.
Oh, I should go there. But you are not an industry. You know, it's, of course you're going to go places, but they need lots of people going to places. But that's going to be a problem that their tourism boards will address in due time.
I'm actually really weird about wanting to go to places in movies and TV shows. Anyway, neither here nor there.
It's great. No, like tourism based on movies and TV
really cool.
is a huge emerging market, and it's very successful. People are taking advantage of it. It's great. I tend to go look at historical crap, but like if I'm in Albuquerque, I'll take the Breaking Bad walking tour. Absolutely.
They have that?
They do.
I want to do the Sound of Music tour.
That would be fun.
In Austria.
Okay, anyway, talking about traveling, being an extra in Game of Thrones. A lot of people want it. It's the last season, so people want this this last chance to get on the show if they want to, and kind of be part of this movement that's taken over pop culture for the past 7 years. How does it happen? Can it happen? Is there any way you can do it, or your friends, or your actor friends, or you know a person who has a daughter who's trying to get into acting, and then she writes Winter is Coming and says, I'm really talented and have like 8 back tattoos. Here's a headshot. Can I do it?
They are specific like that.
One time someone wrote I have a tattoo. I'd look really good on screen, which I guess is interesting.
For the Dothraki?
I once got, I'm not kidding, like someone sent in a full stunt tape. Like
really?
Of himself
Why haven't we watched
stunts.
that on this show?
As I think it might violate some kind of, I don't want to embarrass the person too much. I'm not naming them.
Do you still have that? I want to watch it.
I'll dig around and see what I can find. But the point is, people want to be in the show. So how can you do it? We know that filming for this final season is going to go through, the word is August of this year, so there's still time.
Wow.
Right? Very late.
When did they wrap up last year? Like March, May,
February,
April?
March-ish, yeah. I mean, they also began later this year.
Yeah.
Or maybe around the same time. And that's only the word. I mean, it could be a little earlier, it could be a little later, but that's what we think from what we've been able to piece together from our correct sources.
Okay.
So there's still time. And if you want to become an extra on Game of Thrones, the thing you can best do is to remain vigilant, because HBO uses a couple of casting companies regularly, and they use them over and over. So if you know which ones to look for, just look at their pages every day. For example, we got Modexpor Internacional, which is a Spanish casting company located in Spain. Does a lot of shooting in Spain, and all those places are going to pronounce the Girona and
Look at you.
Gaxtalu. I'm not even going to try. Anyway, they have a Facebook page, Modexpor Internacional. They did a lot of work for season 6 and 7. And we know they're going back to Spain for season 8, so that would be a great move. I think we have a sample casting notice from Modexpor that we could put on the screen. It's in Spanish, but you get the idea. This is the area where they filmed the Dragonstone scenes on the beach last year.
Yes.
See the little pretty areas and the stratification. And so things you're looking at on this call. They have things like the day of the call, when you're all going to show up.
Got to be available.
Got to be available. I mean, if for Game of Thrones, you'll make yourself available.
But yes.
You best believe it. Show up.
You clear that schedule.
I mean, Kayla, you've been an extra in TV for some time. Have you gone to an extra casting call?
Yeah. Well, okay, so it works a little differently. I did it in LA through Central Casting.
Sure.
And if you live in LA, New York, Louisiana, or Georgia, you can go through Central Casting. Basically, you have to go in their office, you give them your I-9, then you're put into their database. Every day, I don't know if it's changed in the last 7 years, but every day you'd call into a number. And they would say what they're looking for as far as extras go. If you fit that description, you push a button. It leads you to the next call. Then you're given the time, date, location. Can you make that? Push the next button. And then eventually you book it if you get past all the criteria. I had one for Great Gatsby, but I couldn't submit myself because you couldn't have highlighted hair.
Gotcha.
Because of the time period.
It makes sense.
It's like, it's that down to the nitty gritty.
Oh, totally. Like for example, in this call, the Modexpor one, you know, they mention how much you're getting paid. They also say that they want, you know, men 20 to 50, good physical condition. they have to be willing to shave their facial hair and couldn't have tattoos. So
Right.
that tells me
Very
probably
specific.
yeah.
And when you go in, you list everything. If you have tattoos, what color your hair is, if you have any piercings, if you have any special talents. A lot of times actors will do this first when they get out to LA because it's a great
Sure.
way to get your SAG card. If you can do something special, like I noticed in this one, if you were missing teeth, they're looking for specifically
That's
people missing two front teeth.
the extra department one.
In
from
an
Northern
extra,
Ireland,
yeah.
right?
So say you were doing that through central casting, if they needed someone with 2 missing teeth, like, oh, I have them, that could get you a SAG voucher. Once you get 3 SAG vouchers, you're SAG eligible, which means you're in the union, you make more money, you get better roles, all that good stuff. So that's why actors typically do that. And then I was looking on Central Casting site today, and there's a lot of people that have gone through Central Casting to get started. Brad Pitt was one of them.
Really?
A lot of big names, you'd be surprised.
Oh, Brad Pitt, really quickly. Did you hear about this story that
Yes.
there was a charity
Speaking of.
there was a charity event before the Golden Globes, and people were bidding on the opportunity to watch an episode of Game of Thrones with Emilia Clarke and Kit Harington, and Brad Pitt bid, I think, $120,000.
And lost.
And lost. He was outbid by somebody.
That's pretty incredible.
It was probably Jorah was outbidding him to watch it with him.
That's a good one.
What was the joke we were all making? I think it's pretty funny.
Pretty good. But yeah, so once you get past that, obviously this probably works differently. For a couple of roles, I did 2 episodes of CSI New York, 1 episode of 90210. They were period episodes, so you go to this huge warehouse in the Valley, and I'm not kidding you, it is the coolest thing. There is like giant rows for every decade. They just have clothing and everything from those time periods. It's insane. So it was kind of fun because the ones I did, not a lot of times as an extra you get hair and makeup and the whole 9 yards, but for these particular roles I did one that was like a 60s theme and one that was like a masquerade ball for CSI New York. So it was really cool to be in the trailer, get hair and makeup done, be among all the extras. You're kind of herded around like cattle while everyone else is in their trailers, but it's a really cool experience to just get on set and see how it all works. I can't imagine what it's like being on Game of Thrones. Like that's a whole.
Oh yeah, like I've seen the.
That would be like being on a movie
I've
set.
Seen the shots. I mean, it's just like, oh, look at the pictures. You in your 60s get up.
Yeah, I even got FaceTime. There's one. With the CW logo. I made it on screen.
And that was for.
That was the 90210 episode. The masquerade mask is from a CSI New York episode we shot.
I mean,
there was a murder at the masquerade ball.
Wasn't you, was it?
No, it wasn't me.
Okay. For Game of Thrones, I mean, I've seen the shots. It's like that, what you described, like rows of decades, but it's just like rows of armor and rows of helmets and rows of weapons. It's really cool. And from what I've read, they do give them a fair amount of, I mean, not all of them to they get makeup and hair, like you said.
Yeah.
But I mean, we're working fantasy, so they will occasionally give you makeup and hair, especially if you have to be some kind of crazy foreign culture that maybe a modern person's not going to look like that just by themselves. So they will. Also, in some cases, they'll give you military training for Game of Thrones sets.
That's kind of fun.
Absolutely. I mean, if they're casting for a battle scene, for a Battle of the Bastards, or Battle of Blackwater, you're gonna have to move and use a weapon and just at least be in the background. So they'll give you training for that. So it's different every time. Although it's interesting that you weren't looking to be on one particular show, you wanted to just be on whatever, and you called it
every day they'll have what they're looking for. It could be, at the time it was like Glee, Modern Family, obviously 90210. And it's movies too. And then if you are, like if you have what they're describing, then you click the next number, and it just keeps going until you finally book it.
But if you want to be in Game of Thrones, your best option is to look at Modexpo International, the Facebook page. Another great place you can look at is a website for a company called the Extras Department. Very straightforward. They do a ton of the shows casting for Northern Ireland, which is another big place they spend a lot of time.
But I did read something that's not so fun for us Americans. You have to be either
Well, that's the thing. Like,
citizen of those countries.
Both of the samples we have here, one from Modexpo and one from the Extra Department, part of their conditions are we want people who are local. Who are, and in the case of the Modexpo one, they said they bring your Spanish identification card and your state ID, basically, for Spain. So that's a harsh reality that you may have to overcome. I mean, I'm sure. So if you want to be an extra in Game of Thrones, you might need to move to Northern Ireland or Spain. Assuming you don't live there already. If you're there already, you are golden.
Go quick, time's a ticking.
I mean, that makes sense, right?
Yeah.
Why would a company want to import somebody from
LA.
New Mexico to go all the way to Northern Ireland? There's probably someone who will fit the bill a little closer. So it's harsh. It is possible, though. I mean, the Comodexpor thing wanted like Spanish cards, wanted ID cards issued by the state. In Northern Ireland one, that casting notice, that's the one that wanted people who are missing teeth and are.
I wonder if that person's getting a SAG voucher.
Around 6 feet-ish or 5'10". That one just wanted people to be locals.
No.
You can lie about that.
You can.
Also, one little distinction I like here, in the one for the extra department, this one wanted people who were missing teeth, legally allowed to work in Northern Ireland, 5'8" to 6'2", medium build. For that case, they wanted like for a featured extra. They wanted someone who didn't have teeth so they could actually put them on camera. A featured extra is someone who is going to be in a shot.
Yes.
Not have a speaking role, probably, but in a shot. Whereas
Through
normal
central
extra,
casting, that would definitely get you a voucher. If you can do something or are going to be on screen that, you know, for instance, they needed someone to like shave their head or skateboard, then they would get a SAG voucher.
And that's for featured extra.
Yes.
Whereas normal extra is just like mill around in the background for a while in this costume.
Yes.
And that's some ways you can do it. We have a big post on Wik, how to become an extra on Game of Thrones. It has links to this stuff, Modexpor. The extras department, they occasionally use other places, so be on the lookout. We'll try to update you when we can.
Dan, I really wish there was a way we could get you as an extra on Game of Thrones.
I think I deserve to be an extra on Game of Thrones.
Devoting your life to the show.
I don't like you putting it like that.
Deserving, dedicating the last, 7 years?
I have not been doing this for 7 years.
Oh, how many years have you been doing it? However long you've been doing it. You put a lot of time into the show. I think you deserve an extra role.
If you're watching HBO, give me a role. I would make a great northerner. I'm pasty. I'm 5'11", so that's not bad. I can do that. I could wear a piece of armor for like minutes at a time. Might have me after that, but we'll see.
Get Kayla on there too. Landing.
Fair enough. You see me in King's Landing? Why?
Like among the townspeople.
Okay.
It's an extra, so it's not like.
Sure.
Unless you want to be a northerner in armor, go for it.
I want a role. No, this isn't enough. I want a speaking role. That's what I want.
Now we're getting greedy.
I want to just play Jon Snow. Just sub me out. Anyway, any other comments, Kayla, on the life of an extra or anything else?
That's about it. Good luck to everyone who's going out to be an
yes,
extra.
Yes, anyone who wants it, I hope this guide gives you a little bit of help, hopefully. Kayla, it's been a delight. And now I'd like to bring on Mr. Josh Hill for our continuing segment, A Song of Dan and Josh, where Josh Hill and I walk through every single chapter of A Song of Ice and Fire, mining it for insights, for, themes, and breaking it down. What does it mean? Where is it going? Who are we as people? And what is George R. R. Martin trying to say with this book? We are still on the first book in the series, Josh, A Game of Thrones. The gimmick is, I've read all the books, you've never read all the books, but you've never read any of the books, we've seen the show. And we read today 2 chapters.
2 really good chapters.
You thought?
I like them.
Yeah, both
one more than
too.
the other, I think, but we can
let's just dive in then. Okay, let's start with Eddard 4, the 4th Ned Stark chapter. He gets to King's Landing. We meet a bunch of new characters. Is this the one that which one did you like the best?
I liked this one more than I liked the Tyrion chapter.
Why?
The Tyrion chapter just felt more slow. This one, because we referenced this in weeks before, this is kind of where the plot does pick up.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, we have the whole assassination plot, and now we see these pieces going in motion where Littlefinger is starting to set up his little game that he's playing within this and trying to turn Ned against Robert, and he's trying to turn him against maybe Tyrion.
The Lannisters, claiming that the knife belongs to Tyrion when he knows it doesn't. We know he knows that.
And just the idea, too, we talked about this last week as well, of Littlefinger becoming this kind of wormy, villainy character who is deceptively evil, because it's Ned trusts him. Ned kind of goes for him.
I mean, I know that I wrote that. I mean, he does trust him. Because I mean, technically, he does. He brings him to Catelyn.
Yeah,
like he does a good deed. It's pretty clear in the text that he doesn't like him.
No, but like and trust are 2 different things.
That's true.
I think that's ultimately Ned's downfall is getting into bed here with this. Yeah, because I have never trusted Littlefinger in my notes, underlined and underscored and all that kind of
I mean,
stuff.
there's a lot of bits in there where Ned makes pretty clear that he, has no stomach for the games Littlefinger plays, but it's natural to him. He's not a. I mean, he presses him up against a wall as he does in the show. When he goes to a brothel, he doesn't like the guy at all, but he does. He picks his allies, and he does choose Littlefinger. I mean, his wife recommends that he does.
And then Littlefinger has his little thing for Catelyn as well.
Right.
I mean, I knew that in the show, which is also was interesting when Ned is basically emasculating him, and it's like you kind of feel. I recognize this tension inside of his head where it's like Littlefinger wants to be with Catelyn, or he's got this thing for Catelyn, and here's Ned, who's married to Catelyn, kind of bullying him around, rightfully so, because Littlefinger's a little, worm.
A little stain.
He's a little finger. Yeah, and then we kind of got plot details of like Robert Baratheon, the Crown, don't have a lot of money. In fact, they're in debt.
Baratheon doesn't sit in his own small council meeting. It's just doing whatever.
Yeah, you made a note about that too, about George R. R. Martin thinking about Lord of the Rings and questions that weren't answered. And kind of seeing what kind of kings, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, basically, George R. R. Martin has said part of the reason he wrote Song of Ice and Fire was he read Lord of the Rings. There's obviously a lot of Lord of the Rings in here. It's inspired every fantasy book after it, pretty much. And he was wondering things like how did the day-to-day go in Lord of the Rings that we didn't see? Aragorn becomes king, great. What's his tax policy? Does he have a standing army? And this big first scene in this chapter is Ned goes into the first small council, and you got Varys, you got Renly, you got Littlefinger, and they're talking about how to pay for this tournament.
Right.
And we would not see this scene in Lord of the Rings.
No.
No one would be talking about this.
It doesn't make for good blockbuster, summer kind of thing. Although, I did, when I read this, thought of the Star Wars prequel movies, because that is essentially what George Lucas did. Because in my head, I was thinking, this would be kind of. I read your note about Lord of the Rings, and I was like, that'd be kind of a garbage blockbuster, going through the tax policies. And then I remembered about 95% of the Phantom Menace is about Trade Federation tax policies and all this kind of stuff, which then reminded me of a Simpsons gag. I don't want to reference the Simpsons Weekly on this show, but it's in
Did you do it last week?
Yeah, with the spirit, the Raven was when Homer has his little spirit vision.
Right.
The Johnny Cash Fox.
Right. Yes, I recall that.
The Simpsons made fun of that, where the Walker breaks into the Senate, is going to kill everybody, and they're like, no, we need to pass this bill first. And he sits down and starts reading his paper, and this kind of reminded me of that. Although it works in the way that George R. R. Martin writes it. It's not.
I think it does too.
Forced, where it's taking us away from the action, whereas Star Wars was taking us away from kind of the action that we had known. This goes back to the seamless world building that he does, where he just kind of works it in there, and you're like, oh yeah, okay.
It also goes with the tension. Exactly. Ned's whole problem is he wants to be the Star Wars action hero. He's getting things done, and he's in a situation where that's not. We have to go through these processes.
Exactly.
And it's kind of why he dies.
Yeah.
Also, it's here from the beginning. It's not like you watch the first few Star Wars movies and then you're blindsided by legislative affairs. It's this has been a part of the story from the beginning, so you can take it easier. Really quick, Julie Davis has a question. Did anybody else see the chains around the Maester's necks being more chokerish in the books rather than the long chains in the show? Any on that?
That's a you observation, not me. I don't really.
I guess. I mean,
pick up on that.
To describe them as chokers in the books, Julie, you're right. So I do. I kind of, I don't know. I hear choker and I see like a fashionable something that It Girl from a 90s movie is wearing.
Dog choker or something.
So I guess I like that they went with the longer chains on the show. But yeah, there is a bit of a disconnect there. Ooh, Emma's been thinking about starting to read the books. I'm not much of a reader, but she's curious. I recommend them, Emma. I bet that we're having a pretty good time here.
As a first-time reader, I would highly
of the books. He's read things before.
I'm actually learning to read for the first time, and I'm already on a Game of Thrones reading level.
Highly literate.
Yeah, read along with us. We're on catch up.
Yeah, we're not that far in. These books are freaking enormous. Okay, what else in here? Again, I think how about Varys? So. What struck me about him is he really does come off as super duper freaking slimy in these chapters. He's always described as powdered and slithering with a soft cooing voice. He hates the sight of blood. He knows everything. They don't know how.
Yeah.
I mean, and we know that as far as these guys go, he's one of the better ones. But I mean, it's easy. I think it's easy to get in Ned's head and see him as Ned sees him.
Exactly.
We don't know any better at this point.
Yeah, and that's how I took it. This is from Ned's perspective, and that's why it makes sense.
Wait, I'm sorry. Kenny says that Dan's rocking the beard. Okay, just go on. Sorry.
You are rocking the beard.
Thank you. I had to point that out.
Varys is not rocking a beard. Varys is rocking no hair.
He couldn't. He's a eunuch.
He couldn't. There you go. But seeing him from Ned's perspective, I understood why he would go with Littlefinger, and that's kind of why. And you're getting the impression that Varys is just as bad as these guys. He's not great. It's kind of, skinniest kid at fat camp type of deal. He's definitely
got his moral quandaries, but in the long run, we know that he has Littlefinger's all driven by what's best for Littlefinger. Varys, at the end of the day, it's like what's best for Westeros.
Yeah.
And Pycelle is like, I don't know, what gets me laid and what can I do for the Tywin Lannister today. Pycelle didn't really give much of an impression. Or what did you think? Did you give him much of an impression?
Not really. Not much of an impression.
Okay, the other one is Renly. I just wanted to point out this one thing that irritates me a little bit. Okay, so Renly Baratheon, Robert's little brother, one of the few gay male characters in the books. It's not terribly offensive, but it bugged me a little bit. And to be fair, it's never said outright that he's gay in the books, just implied. In the show, it's definitely confirmed. There are full-on sex scenes with Loras. But it bugged me a little bit that so here's the one gay male character, and the distinguishing thing about him is that he dresses well. It's like, come on, George R. R. Martin.
Come on, George.
Go get stereotypes just a little bit.
Oh, George.
I mean, it does help to remember this is written, 96, 97.
Yeah.
A lot's changed since then. And it's not bad. I don't blame him that much for it, but it is a little you couldn't have given him some other characteristic.
Little
that's his distinguishing thing.
Cliche, but yeah.
I also didn't like that the show kind of cast a slighter guy, because he's very much strapping and bigger and like Robert in the books.
Yeah, that is something that I was wondering, because I was trying to remember who it was on the show, remembering the actor going with the character name, and it did kind of didn't jive for me that well.
Yeah,
but
it's because they know the character is gay, so they're like, oh, let's cast someone slim and lithe. That's what the gay people are like. Is my assumption. I don't know. I'm taking it down. That's what I'm going to do. But no, it's a good job, but just that got me just a little bit. Any other closing thoughts on this chapter?
No, that was pretty much it. These Ned chapters, they seem to be the most interesting in that they're advancing the plot.
Oh yeah,
because it does make sense, because he is the central figure, it seems, at this point.
For the first book, definitely.
For the first book, and the other chapters kind of, maybe that's why I didn't like the Tyrion chapter in comparison to this chapter, is because it does feel removed, both because it's all the way at the Wall versus King's Landing.
It is literally removed.
Literally removed, and also it's more character driven. It's more about the development of the characters in the world outside, whereas Ned, it feels like those chapters go along a little quicker. Because it is developing the plot a little bit more.
The intrigue in the first book is absolutely King's Landing. And then the Wall is, nothing really happens in the first book. It's all White Walker setup. It's not going to pay off for literally years from the showtime. Yeah, I'd forgotten how little happens at the Wall in the first book. Speaking of the Tyrion chapter, Tyrion 3. So yeah, we do have some more slower thematic stuff to chew on. We got Tyrion leaves, and okay, so here's the thing that you can comment on. When Tyrion, in both the show and the books, Jon and Tyrion have this nice goodbye conversation, where they kind of say they're friends. I think in the book they shake hands. In the show they're just like, see ya. But in the show they add on that Tyrion's peeing off the side of the wall, and Jon kind of walks up to him.
Yeah.
In the book he goes up there and he meets Jon. Any idea why they would change that?
It visually gives you a good idea of what Tyrion's character is at that point, and he's, his arc does start literally, and now we see him in the show, and he's, working with Daenerys and Jon and all this kind of stuff, whereas his arc literally starts with him peeing off of a frozen wall. So he does kind of go to a different place. I like that. I didn't mind it that much. In the book,
I didn't mind it.
He does feel more distinguished in the books. He does feel more of a character that's wise. He's wise in the show, but it comes across almost juxtaposing that against, he's this goofy little imp guy, and he likes prostitutes and peeing off of walls, whereas the book is more, this is, he probably because you do go inside of his head, but you do get the impression more so that he is this wise character without kind of
absolutely
this not necessarily slapsticky, but this extra kind of thing that he has to overcome.
I mean, in the books, it's kind of somber. He gets this desire to go up to the wall to look at it because he's curious, because he's interested, and he appreciates that he's in a place that is sort of sacred, and he might never return to. In the show, we just see him peeing off it.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe that was what drove him up there. We don't know, though.
And that does seem like late show Tyrion to me. The type of Tyrion that would be a little sentimental and go up and look at something like that. Right. Feels like season 5, 6, 7 Tyrion. As far, more so than, the beginning of the show. But
of course, I mean, it's harder to, how could you get the internal decision Tyrion makes to take one last look without clunky dialogue on the show? It'd be hard.
So you just make him pee off of the wall instead.
You got to do something.
Go completely in the other direction.
And also, it would take forever. So I get it's just interesting to see where they go. Okay, how about I want to ask you quickly about Alistair Thorne. So Jon's drill master. Is there anything redeeming about this guy?
Doesn't seem so.
It doesn't seem like there's anything.
Not really.
He's just nasty. He can't take a joke. I remember he walked out of the meeting when Tyrion pokes a little fun at him. He hates Jon because he poked fun at him. It's one of those, he's like a Stannis type, doesn't like laughter kind of guys. Apparently he doesn't train his people very well.
Yeah.
But he's a knight, so I guess that's one thing. I will say, I thought they did a decent job with him on the show, because he had some redeeming bits. I remember after he killed Jon Snow, he had a meeting with all the people, and he kind of explained himself, how he, Jon was going against what the Watch thought. I mean, I didn't agree with it, but I respected it. He had a nice talk with Jon during the battle episode about it's hard to be a leader, everyone second guesses you.
Yeah.
And I feel like he's pure terrible in the books.
Yeah, we discussed it last week, but it is kind of like that Full Metal Jacket, Arlie Ermy character is very much, Alistair Thorne here.
Is that how you say it, Arlie Ermy?
Yeah, Arlie Ermy.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm saying Emery. Put an O in there for fun.
I don't know. I don't think he's that nice of a guy, so I don't really care. I don't really care if we get his name right.
Is he alive? We're getting off track.
He is. He's alive still. But so Thorne is kind of, I think, purposefully like this. I don't mind it that much.
It's fine.
I don't need it to have any redeeming qualities in the book, because it does get the point across that
it's also early yet, to be fair.
It is early, and it kind of goes back to this thing that I like about how there isn't a whole lot going on at the wall, where it is a little kind of, oh man, there's nothing going on at the wall. It sets that stage that there is nothing going on at the wall. It's not like you need to manufacture drama here. There's nothing going on at the wall, and Thorne, not a funny guy, doesn't like to take a joke, because he's been there, he's been there at the wall in this world of nothing
for years.
Ever.
Yeah.
So yeah, that naturally I think that's going to erode your humor, but
naturally.
I don't know.
I mean, you're right. So the plot-wise, not a lot happens, but we do get a very important bit when kind of Lord Commander sits down with Tyrion and tells him, look, there's stuff beyond the wall. It's bad. You need to tell people about what it is, and he's deadly serious about it. Now,
send help.
Yeah, send help. Now, what he's talking about are the White Walkers. They don't, I mean, I think he does name them once or twice in there. We're still at the point where no one believes them or takes them seriously at this point. But this is obviously hugely crucial to the story as a whole.
No.
Only paying off, again, those long depth charge, long-term payoffs I was talking about. Here's a fun little theory I can run by you really quick. We're talking about the metaphors of the show, because not a lot of plot talk about metaphors instead. A lot of people see the White Walkers as a metaphor for climate change, because so there's all the politics going down in King's Landing and all the warring, all the factions fighting each other, while this big thing that's going down to kill them all and is being ignored gets on them. Does that sound like anything reasonable to you?
It sounds reasonable. I don't think that in 1997 George R.R. Martin was so progressive that he was going to write an entire series.
Super doubt it.
About this thing that, Al Gore doesn't actually make a huge deal for another, 4 years or something like that. So
it's a very good point.
I mean,
it's also a good fantasy conceit. I mean,
it is. I can see the metaphor. It's there. It's kind of like, you go back and watch old movies, and so not to reference Star Wars again, but everybody now watches the prequel movies and trying to save them, particularly Episode 3, and seeing it as George Lucas's commentary in the Bush era in America. So, I mean, and naturally you have the allegory there of the rise of Hitler and all that kind of stuff. So, I can appreciate why people would have this
One guy
theory.
who should do political commentary, it's George Lucas.
Right, lots of taxation and legislation. I can appreciate the metaphor. I just don't think that it was the original intention, but it's definitely there. So, and it lines up and makes sense.
I mean, I think at the end of the day, once you make something like this, people can just read anything they want.
Yeah.
It doesn't really matter what you intended. Like, people do it, and if they enjoy it, good on them. So again, not a lot happened. Really quick, I want to touch on, what do you think of Martin's use, I guess just Martin's prose. I liked this line, the wind pulled at Tyrion's clothes like an insistent lover. When you read this, something like that,
Yeah.
Do you think it's poetic, stupid, goofy, what?
I go back and forth. It depends on what kind of mood I'm in, I guess. If I'm in a good mood, I read that, I'm like, wow, all right, George. But if I'm like just kind of reading it, I'm like, oh God, this again. Like, my God, I remember in the very first chapter when he's like describing the leather robes and the capes in great detail. It kind of wears thin after a little while. Like that first chapter or the prelude or whatever it was, I was like, oh, okay, I get this. He's being very descriptive. Now it's like, all right, George, we get it. You're a writer. Okay, man, let's go. Move it along a little bit here, but
Okay.
it doesn't rub me
No, it's
that
fine.
wrong,
It's
but
cute.
it's just kind of, a minor quibble.
He has some whoppers throughout the series. It'll be fun to get to them. I guess about it. Any other thoughts on the third Tyrion chapter, Josh?
No, I mean, it does seem, again, like we are meant to like Tyrion more than the other Lannisters. Almost
absolutely.
to the point where, if you want to talk about theories, I don't particularly have one, but like thinking in my mind here, he's almost not a Lannister. I mean, he is a Lannister, blood Lannister, all that kind of stuff, but the way that he acts, the way that he interacts with others, and the way that people interact with him, I don't get the impression that the rest of Westeros sees him as a Lannister. Maybe that's the point. Maybe they don't see, because I was trying to think, if that was Jaime or if that was Cersei in his role at the Wall, granted, they'd be approaching it in a different way, but they would also be received very differently. There wouldn't be, I don't think that somebody sits down with Cersei and says, there's White Walkers north of the Wall, you got to send help. I think that that is kind of approached differently, whereas Tyrion, maybe it is because he is more approachable and more relatable, he's able to bridge more gaps than the rest of his family would be. So he seems very un-Lannister-y.
He definitely does.
In the show, he kind of does. He actually literally moves away from his family and joins the other team. But
after you kill your father, we're going to do that. I mean, I disagree with you that people don't. I think people see him as a Lannister. Like, they all call him Lannister.
Well, yeah.
He can like, he won Jon over, but you had to hang. He's a Lannister till you get to know him, and then he's better.
just get to know the true Tyrion, the man underneath.
Yeah.
There you go.
I think next week we should read another 2. I think we should read the next Arya chapter and then Daenerys.
I like it.
But we talked pretty good about this one. We can keep this going. It's like a weird push and pull. Like, do we want to read tons of chapters but dilute the talk, or just like focus on a couple at a time?
I like focusing in a couple at a time.
I think we'll do 2.
Lord knows we have
week.
plenty of time until the show comes back. So.
Anyway, we'll see you guys next week at 4 p.m. Central Time here at Wick Live on the Winter's Coming Facebook page for more Game of Thrones news, more great information for you, maybe a giveaway we'll see, and more A Song of Dan and Josh. Thanks a lot. See you next week.